The organization claimed that their way of life even improved health conditions, with some reporting recoveries from serious illnesses. He found it hard to believe. The idea that mindset or lifestyle alone could heal someone seemed absurd to him. He believed circumstances dictated everything, and people had to accept their realities. The meeting had been difficult, but not just because of the topic. His mind was elsewhere. He was consumed with thoughts of his brother and the recent troubling accusations. He feared the worst, that his brother was involved in something serious, possibly leading a dangerous group. Yet he had no proof, only a sinking feeling. After the meeting, he stepped outside for air, walking through the bustling city streets. He barely noticed the traffic, the street vendors, or the crowds around him. His thoughts were still tangled in the past, memories of his brother as a reckless child, always testing limits. He recalled a 4th of July party years ago when his brother had nearly set fire to their home. He had tried to stop him, but no one had listened. The blame had fallen on him instead. In frustration, he had blurted something he regretted, something about his brother not truly belonging. Their father's furious reaction had burned into his memory. Lost in thought, he barely noticed when a familiar voice called his name. A woman from the marketing department of a hospital approached him. She was there for a meeting but had recognized him. As they spoke, her expression shifted, and he knew what she was about to say before she said it. She had just remembered what had happened, his father's death. She apologized, offering her condolences. He accepted them mechanically, used to the words by now. It was a routine exchange, but inside he felt something tighten. His father was gone, and no amount of polite words could change that. Charles stood on the sidewalk, lost in his own thoughts. He wasn't sure how to answer the question about his father, so he chose to leave instead. The woman beside him offered some sympathetic words, but he barely acknowledged them. His mind drifted to random details, the glimmering specks in the sidewalk, a tune playing in his head from earlier that morning. She gave him a gentle pat on the arm before disappearing into the building. He watched her go, feeling disconnected from everything around him. Leaning against the cold stone of the building, Charles wished he could simply lie down on one of the stone benches and escape his thoughts. The strong smell of chlorine from the nearby fountain made his head throb. A sharp pain pulsed at his temple, possibly the start of a migraine. His gaze wandered to a group of cleaning staff still chatting on the corner. Could one of them be the person he was looking for? He remembered the security guard from the hospital telling him that a cleaning lady had been the one to find his father. She had made the call that set everything into motion. Later, when Charles tried to track her down, he was told she had quit and left no way to be reached. He wondered if she had left because she was afraid, or maybe she simply didn't want to be involved in something so tragic. Either way, she was the last person to see his father alive, and he had so many questions for her. Had his father said anything in those final moments? Was there regret? A final message? But there were no answers, only silence. The afternoon sun briefly broke through the clouds, casting a golden hue over the fountain. The color reminded him of his father's headstone, pulling him even deeper into his thoughts. Meanwhile, another day was beginning elsewhere. A woman sat in her kitchen, dreading an upcoming meeting. Normally, she enjoyed these gatherings, sipping tea, exchanging gossip, feeling a sense of control. But today, she wished for anything that would allow her to escape it. A sudden storm, an illness, anything to buy her more time. She even checked her temperature, hoping for an excuse to stay home. But the meeting would go on as planned, and she had no choice but to face it. Her mind drifted back to a conversation from the past. Her husband had once pushed their son into taking a coaching job at a school. The decision had been made for him without his input, leading to an argument behind closed doors. It wasn't surprising. He had always resisted being told what to do. The father and son had once been close, bonding over shared interests, but something had changed along the way. A distance had formed, and now it seemed impossible to bridge the gap. The father tried, but the son remained cold, uninterested in reconnecting. Despite this, he eventually accepted the job. His parents watched him stand on the sidelines in his new role, offering guidance to young athletes. When asked to help with gym classes, he jumped at the opportunity, eager to bring in new ideas. His father, seeing this, felt a quiet sense of victory, squeezing his wife's hand as if to say, "See, it was the right choice." She wanted to believe it too. Maybe this was the change their son needed. Maybe this would bring him back to them. Her thoughts were interrupted by the sound of the kitchen door opening. Her son walked in, barely acknowledging her presence as he talked on the phone. He looked different, messy, tired, distant. When was the last time they had really spoken? She watched him move around the kitchen, searching for something to eat, feeling like a stranger in her own home. Desperate to break the silence, she offered to make fresh coffee. He dismissed the idea, ready to settle for reheating what was already there. But she insisted, clinging to the small act of making coffee as a way to connect with him. He stood back, arms crossed, clearly uninterested in conversation. Still, she tried. She asked about his job, about wrestling, searching for anything that might spark a real discussion. He only laughed. It wasn't the response she had hoped for. The air between them remained heavy, filled with things left unsaid. She gripped the counter, struggling to find the right words, but deep down, she wondered if there were any words left that could truly reach him. The conversation in the kitchen carried an underlying tension, though it was masked by casual exchanges. The young man, seemingly indifferent, reached for a cookie from the old jar, the very same jar that once held sugar cookies in the past. He took a bite, chewing slowly, letting crumbs fall to the floor, his nonchalant attitude evident in his every move. He stretched his fingers, cracking his knuckles, and spoke with an air of expectation, implying that the woman had enough influence to make things disappear, to change situations at will. The words lingered, but he didn't wait for a response, disappearing into the mudroom. When he returned, he was lacing up his sneakers, bright orange and white, loud and attention-grabbing. His actions were unpredictable, as though he was a creature from the depths of the ocean, moving in ways she couldn't anticipate. She asked where he was going, and he casually mentioned a trip to the city, just for the morning, to cover a shift at a friend's shop. When she inquired about the shop, her relief was almost comical upon hearing it was a shoe store. Shoes were simple, harmless, but he immediately called out her feigned interest, reminding her she hadn't even spoken to his friend at the funeral. The remark stung. She pulled away, retreating to her car, still parked outside because she hadn't yet moved anything in the garage. Slamming the door shut felt satisfying, releasing some of the frustration inside her. As she sat in the car, the sounds of birds and rustling trees filled the silence. She lifted her hand, placing her lips against the yellow stone on her ring, an old habit from times of distress. The ring held a deep history, one that had once symbolized love but now carried weight she couldn't shake. The first night she had taken it off, she had buried it in her jewelry box, rejecting what it stood for. Yet, even then, she had wandered into the office, searching for answers among the neatly arranged papers and polished plaques. The ring's cold metal against her lips now gave her a strange sense of comfort,